Hi there, welcome to Buzz Banter. I'm Sam.
I'm Maya.
And today we're going to be doing one of our retro segments, specifically Samurai.
Yay! Well, do you like the book definition or the movie definition?
How about all of the above,
Okay.
including all depictions of samurai?
The word samurai derives from the verb sabarao, to wait on, serve. And in an early legal usage, it meant a personal attendant. It isn't clear exactly when its meaning narrowed to designate mainly an armed attendant than a certain type of warrior. Still, by emphasizing the original meaning of attendant or servant, one can note the singular fate of the samurai as warrior. Even after he became the de facto ruler of Japan in the 12th century, de jure, he remained subordinate to the supreme civilian, the emperor. The highest position he could aspire to, Seitai Shogun, commander-in-chief to subjugate the barbarians, or shogun, was indeed technically no more than the emperor's military deputy, and an emergency position at that.
That was a longer definition than we technically needed, but okay.
Meh.
Anyways, we're basically talking about how the depiction of samurai in various differences,
Formats, yeah.
various different formats, how it's changed, how some of it stayed the same.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing with samurai in any depiction is essentially they're super honorable.
Yeah, and then they've got their own Bushido code.
Depending on which depiction you look at.
Yeah. They've come in from like as old as black and white movies for Seven Samurai.
Possibly one of the greatest movies of all time.
Possibly. And then they've come in with Samurai Jack.
Samurai Jack, even though he technically knew more than just samurai sword, because he went around the world and learned every different fighting style, he could literally fight as anything. He's only really a samurai because they actually made a little reference in one episode to The Wolf and the Cub, which is an old story from Japan about a samurai and his son. Mm-hmm. And apparently Jack meets them, and that inspires him to be a samurai.
Because he's gone back to the past. Well, he was trying to get back to the past. He's in the future.
And even his sword is made by a Hindu god, a Norse god, and I forgot and an Egyptian god. There's no Japanese, no Amaterasu, no Susanoo, no Japanese gods or Shinto gods, I should say, are a part of making a samurai sword.
Yeah, none of that.
None of that, just the other three.
And it's permeated into video games like Oboro Muramasa, Dynasty Warriors, the Samurai Warriors games. Even the new Pokemon Conquest is actually a samurai game. It's got Nobunaga. You've got Nobunaga in this? Yeah, you got samurai.
Possibly one of the more famous characters in Japanese history is Nobunaga.
Oddly enough, he's still quoting off of that play about a samurai. Even in the English version, he's like, a man lives for about 50 years, but perhaps it's only but a vain dream. Like, I was like, wait, I've seen this before. Goes back. Atsumori's No play. I was like, wait, even Kenshin quotes this. Kenshin from anime. And I was like, Samurai Champloo. They also quote this.
A very different take on the samurai, since he's a guy who uses a dulled sword or a reverse blade, technically.
Yeah. By the way, Kenshin's also in Pokemon Conquest. He doesn't start with a Mewtwo, but he will get a Mewtwo.
I don't know. We're talking about samurai, not Pokemon. That was an earlier discussion.
Yeah, but Kenshin's in there.
Kenshin is in there. The reason why you mentioned him is because he is a famous samurai, a manslayer, as they call him, or Batosai, if you want to get technical.
Yeah.
But the other depictions include they have these animated series of Samurai 7 where bandits are giant mechs.
Yeah.
And you can still deflect their swords with normal samurai swords.
Yeah, and then they've got Samurai Champloo, which is now available on Blu-ray in English, and it is gorgeous. A Mugen with his like breakdancing fighting tactics, despite the fact that he technically is always going against the samurai Jin. Jin, I think, is definitely a samurai, whereas
I thought you talked more about Jin than anything, but you're really going heavy on the Mugen.
Yeah, but like Mugen's style is dojo's taught. Because there's this huge dichotomy in present samurai culture where you have the dojo taught samurai, where it's all very skillful, very precise, and like very controlled. Whereas Mugen is more the Ronin, where he's unpredictable, he's rash, he goes everywhere with his sword movements.
Well, I think there's an actual severe depiction when people talk about samurai and culture between a traveling swordsman and an actual samurai. Because actual samurai are more or less soldiers.
They're actually gentlemen. They're from high-class families that get put that...
it's a Japanese knight.
Send their kids to the dojo, which is kind of like boarding school. You come out as like a knight type of thing.
Yeah.
But you're still a server, like in service to the lord, right?
Hence why this word samurai means to serve, as you were mentioning earlier in the book.
Oddly enough, usually when you have, in poetry especially, when you have... Usually when you have a trained swordsman from a dojo versus a ronin, usually the ronin loses. Like, even Seven Samurai, the ronin are the ones coming in and stealing they're technically bandits. And
it's like the difference between a street fighter and a trained soldier. Obviously, like, a trained marine is gonna kick the ass of anyone who's, like, learned to fight on the streets. Regardless of what your opinion is, the guy who's trained will F you up.
Occasionally, the ronin or will be overcome by... will overcome the samurai, or more interestingly yet, occasionally you'll have the self-taught samurais that beat both dojo and the ronin. Once in a while, not always, but it does.
But anyways, back to the culture thing.
Yeah.
Basically, it's one of the coolest cultures. Most people always talk about how ninjas are the big thing now. It's like, I'm a ninja. But really, I've seen more things happen with samurais than anything. Samurais have always been the kind of the go-to thing when it comes to that protagonist, or even a secondary protagonist. Where he's like the super honorable guy. It's more like the stock character, the samurai character.
Yeah,
he's order versus the chaos. Ninjas are more or less just assassins at that point.
They're more like the underhanded killers. Whereas the samurai, really, the most skilled samurai, like according to most of the older poems, are the ones who don't need to kill people to beat them. Mm-hmm. They beat them like the guys admit defeat because they realize that even with the wooden swords that they would lose. There's like no point going against this guy until I train.
And like I said, there's always a huge depiction because most people think like, if it's Japanese and they have the katana, it's a samurai, but that's not the case.
I mean, Sephiroth has quite the samurai sword, but he's not a samurai.
Well, there's another character too in actual like movies. I hope I pronounce his name right, but it's Zatoichi, the blind swordsman. If anyone can remember that, but he's not really a samurai. He's just a swordsman who is also blind.
Yeah.
And he obviously can take down anybody if you ever see the movies. There's a long series of movies where he just destroys everybody.
We've seen The Last Samurai, and it depicts the samurais as like are also main characters on stage for when the Industrial Revolution hit Japan, how they had to adapt their cultural ways or actually get lost in the midst of time.
I would also like to talk, in Last Samurai, a lot of their philosophies that I actually read up about were actually taken from a police force, if I'm not mistaken. Like the whole killing you if you lose a fight thing was actually taken. I forget what the police force is called, but there's a drama that's based on it, and it starts with an S. I totally forget.
Shogun?
No, it's that's not it. Look, you can look it up if you want, but they wear like blue.
I watched
they do like the seppuku. Seppuku.
Yeah.
If you like lose a fight, that was from them. That wasn't a normal samurai thing.
It's not. It was especially important when you look at the history for Nobunaga, right? I think it's his. I forget if it's his granddaughter or his niece. No, it's his niece. His niece is Her modernized name is Gracia. I forget what her Japanese name is because she became Christian. She had the option to kill herself because she comes from a long line of samurai when her home was taken. And she said because she had converted to Christianity, despite being samurai, that it would be dishonorable for her to kill herself. So she told the enemy that they could kill her.
I guess
she basically had them.
I guess the basic thing we're trying to say is there's a lot of misconceptions on what a real samurai is. Like even Samurai Jack, he tries to be a lot of samurai, but really he's more worldly than that. Because he had to be. He couldn't just be a samurai. He had to be more than that. And I guess they only even Samurai 7. Technically, I guess they're samurai, but they're more or less traveling swordsmen. Because it's like I said, it's more or less when samurai is a soldier. Ronin, I guess, would just be a fighter.
A fighter, yes.
Yeah.
But if you look at the recent movie, Goemon is now available. I think Funimation produced it in Blu-ray and DVD as well, with English subs. Goemon himself is like the Peter Pan story, right, where he steals from the rich, gives to the poor, but he himself was
You mean Robin Hood?
Oh, sorry, Robin Hood. Oh no.
Peter Pan's the guy who abducts your kids.
Sorry, because I'm imagining, because I remember there's so many scenes of him flying through the air when he runs out with like bags of money.
Okay.
But he's actually in the story. The backstory is he was a samurai. He was Lady Cha-Cha's samurai. It's her yojimbo, which means bodyguard per se.
Okay.
But this movie is one of the most expensive movies to date that was produced in Japan, and currently Goemon is as a samurai. He still has the swords, but because he's thrown it away, he's become a lonin because he does all this stealing without the use of his old sword. So they're like, yeah, he's technically a lonin now. His character is very much a modern interpretation of what if you gave up your swords because of the world is becoming so industrialized. How else would you become a thief in such a world with the technology that was available?
There's many reasons. There's always going to be thieves in that, but that's a totally different discussion than what we're on.
Yeah, but he was a samurai that had still is very skillful with a sword. He used other people's swords because it's more logical. He's like, well, these guys have swords. Why would I bring mine? Per se, it's a very interesting concept that because your world is modernizing so much that you need to adapt even as a samurai. You contrast him with the samurai,
which is kind of like the opposite of what the original samurais in real life thought of.
Yeah,
they totally did not want to adapt to the new way of the world.
Yeah,
because they viewed it more as an invasion, which kind of translates to a lot of things. Samurai Champloo, it translated a bit too.
Yeah.
You actually saw a bit of that in that series.
Oddly enough, Nobunaga is usually portrayed as a villain in a lot of the games and the movies that we've seen.
Depends which one you look at.
Yeah, but in the Goemon universe, because it's like a retrospective, right? They portray Nobunaga as a samurai that's willing to use guns. He has his swords, but just in case, he has these modern weapons.
Depiction of samurais I think I've ever seen was in the game Total War Shogun 2, where they literally are just a force of soldiers, and then you have regular samurai, you have elite samurai, you have a whole bunch. And samurai are just not about swords. They do other things too.
They have their own swords.
The swords are the main thing. They have arrows, they do bow and arrows, they do have ranged combat.
The earliest samurais actually did not use swords. They used bows.
And they have spears too.
Yeah, they switched to using swords later on because it was more iconic than a bow. Also, oddly enough, there's like a couple poems where about samurai where they're like, my bow is really, really bad. Like, it is so weak. If the enemy finds out I use this terrible bow to kill people, as in it's so weak that I will dishonor them. So the guy would rather risk his life, run into like the lake and grab his bow, than let the enemy realize that he's just been killing people with this like really shoddy looking stick. Yeah, but that's where honor comes in, eh?
Yeah. Anyways, we kind of have to wrap this up now. Those are our thoughts on basically samurai in the mainstream.
We hope that
the way it's been depicted.
We hope that in the future that they'll be more
accurate depictions.
More, if not accurate, then like even more less stylistic portrayals, more story or more like historically accurate designs.
Anyways,
there's enough style. We got Afro samurais and
it's easy to make things awesome. It's hard to make things work well, I guess, more accurately. But anyways, those are our thoughts. Tell us your thoughts in the comments below and follow us. Subscribe. See ya. Bye.
See ya.